voice of God you hear is actually Bernard.
Bernard.
Owner operator of Kaotic Radio.
In the control room.
Wish it was deep.
Oh.
Okay, let's do this.
We have a great show for you today.
Yeah, I hate that invitation, and none of our listeners are old enough to get it.
What, the Ed Sullivan? We got a really good show. Got a really good show coming. So hang in there, people. We're going to be calling the world's greatest drummer, Hunt Sales, in about 10 minutes here.
I thought it was Ringo Starr.
We're going to start the show and cover our bullshit, because I haven't talked to you, man.
Yeah, we haven't chatted in a while.
What's up, chum?
I've been good. Had some business in LA yesterday. You know,
Yeah.
I got out before the rain, which was good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what we doing, Burbank?
Hey guys, give me 20 seconds.
20 seconds. You want 20 seconds? You got 20 seconds.
Actually, all I need is 5.
He wants 20
Ready?
seconds. We'll give him 20 seconds.
I can spare 20 seconds for.
Yeah.
This is chaoticradio.com.
You put that picture of Hunt I gave you? Oh, here we go. You put his picture on there? You know what that means when you hear that background music?
Butts are here and on the air.
It means it's time for the Jeff and Janki Show.
And-
right here in Montclair, California. Just about an hour drive from Hollywood.
Or anything else of importance.
Yeah, or any other town that's important. How you doing, chum?
Not bad, mon ami. How have you been? Jeff has been building a pterodactyl. Tell us about
Not
that.
only that, no, I've been doing some stuff for the, we're building a theme, a prehistoric theme for the Signal Hill Children's Library. So it's going to, we're going to have our signatures chiseled in the rocks and everything. So it's pretty cool. So other than that, just last time we were at Burbank, we were at Dark Delicacies.
Yeah, we saw the great Mick Garris, the lovely Cynthia Garris, and of course, the king of the swing, Larry Cohen.
Yes.
I'm working on an article about one of Larry's movies. I can't name yet because I don't want him to rip me off. You know what I've been doing?
What?
I've been working on 2 books. Again, I can't mention the name of them yet, but I did some run and gun interviews. I haven't done run and gun interviews where you grab your tape recorder and interview a bunch of people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm naturally loud, if that helps.
Naturally, wow. I mean, we actually, Janky ain't loud enough.
One of our guests asked me to moderate a screening of his film. I saw our pal Mark Savage.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And again, Mark was always a hero to me as a kid because he came from Australia.
Right.
And of all the places he could have gone to, he stayed in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And him and my late, great, much missed older brother, Tom, made an 8mm movie. And Mark was showing us all these amazing tricks on how to direct, how to do this, how to do that. So I did, I moderated for Mark, his leading lady, the leading actor, and the editor for Purgatory Road. The editor had actually cut Killer Clowns from Outer Space, so it was kind of exciting.
Oh, yeah, that was a great one. Me and you were at the 25th anniversary.
With the Kyoto Brothers. We saw the
Man, we took pictures with them creepy-ass clowns, man.
It's true.
That was pretty terrifying. It was a great party, though.
Oh, yeah. No, a hell of a party. A great Monster Palooza after party.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the Kyoto Brothers, when I was 14 years old, on the first set I ever crashed, one of the Kyoto Brothers came up to me, and we were shooting, and they were shooting this terrible Blade Runner ripoff in what is now the Citadel. But back then it was the Uniroyal Tire Factory.
Oh, yeah.
And they were doing the amazing sets. The movie is incoherent and terrible, but the amazing sets. And the Kyoto Brothers came up to me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he says, one of them takes off in his hand. He goes, "You're too young to be here." 2, he goes, "You're not supposed to be here." And I'm like terrified.
Too young to be here, not supposed to be here.
Yeah, and I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, it's 3 o'clock in the morning on a POS, and you're the only one smiling. My first movie set, man. I was in heaven.
Was this back in Michigan?
No, this is out here.
Oh, out here.
Yeah.
Speaking of Michigan, where you're from, so is our guest, Hunt Sales, and son of Soupy.
And his late father, Soupy Sales. Soupy Sales was an icon in Detroit.
Let's call him up right now, Bernard.
Cool.
Our special guest today, Hunt Sales, calling from Austin, Texas. And he's got a new album out called Get Your Shit Together.
Wow.
Yeah, and that I don't know. That means a lot to me, man, because I'm still trying to do that.
Yeah, everyone is.
There's still hope for me, man.
I wouldn't say that. Oh, man. Is Bernard playing Tetris again?
Yeah.
Keep folding, Bernard. Keep them coming. Keep stacking. But yeah, Hunt Sales, brother of Tony, son of Soupy, you know.
They have a great legacy, man.
They do. And of course, Detroit icons.
Yes. How we doing in there?
Talking to me or Bernard? Oh,
Okay.
That's
Keep talking.
That's the wrong finger. You shouldn't be showing Jeff, Bernard. Something a little closer to the middle. Yeah.
That wasn't my finger.
Technically, it's sort of halfway.
There it goes.
Hello.
L.A. to Austin. L.A. to Austin. Do you read me?
Yes, we do.
Wow,
Good
boy.
morning, Hunt. How you doing,
Sales,
man?
The man, the myth. How's it going, my
okay.
friend?
I'm alive and well.
That's great. I want to introduce you to my co-host, Pat Jankowitz, from where? Dearborn, Michigan?
No, Sterling Heights, baby.
Sterling Heights.
Born in Detroit, raised in Sterling Heights. Where were you born, Hunt?
Okay. In the hospital, but
Thanks, smartass.
that's the worst one, right?
Yeah.
In the hospital, right? In Detroit, we lived in Grosse Pointe.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep. A little bit it's not too far from 8 Mile, right?
Oh, well, quite a bit. But you know what? I do have a Sterling Heights to Grosse Pointe connection.
Yeah, right.
No, my brother Tom wrote the movie Grosse Pointe Blank because in Sterling Heights we dreamed of Grosse Pointe.
Yeah, Grosse Pointe. Well, the trip is, my experience being from Detroit is that my dad was busy all the time working.
Wow.
And my mom was a runway model at the department store. This is in the...
Wow.
Was she at Hudson's or was she at Sears?
Yeah, it may have been. You know what I mean? I wish she was here. I could ask her, but she's gone.
Wow,
But
I'm sorry.
I was raised, basically, we had a maid, a black maid, and she raised me. And the joke, and then her husband, who I called my Uncle George, he worked over at the plant over at Ford.
Wow.
Wow.
And
My mom was a
called
nurse
my
there.
uncle. And so the joke in my family is that I bonded with them.
Ah.
You know what I mean? So that was my experience being a little boy in Detroit. Of course, occasionally going down to the where they shot my dad's show, and he'd go down there on a Sunday and watch midget wrestling.
Yes.
Whoa. Was this Channel 20? Was this WXON? Or was this Channel 50, Kaiser Broadcasting?
Yeah. Probably Channel 50. And
Midget wrestling. I forgot about that.
Doing whatever, and I'm watching these midgets jump around. 6 years old, watching these midget wrestlers that were probably not much taller than me.
Wow.
Not the same, and that was kind of surreal. But that was my experience in Detroit. With the people that worked. Because like I said, my dad worked all the time, and so did my mom. So I was basically raised most of the time by the Aunt Mary, who was and her husband, who would come by and hang out.
Are they still with us?
I'm sorry?
Is Aunt Mary still with us?
Who knows? Probably not.
Oh, wow.
She'd have to be 100. You know, could be. I doubt
Wow.
it. But then I left Detroit at 7 and moved to California. My dad was, you know, the biggest thing in Detroit, and then it was time to go to California and do. He did it, made a deal with ABC TV, which turned out to be not go so well. I remember he did a season or so of his show, and then it tanked. And
Was
here
this
we are
before
in
it was
California.
called? Before it was called the Soupy Sales Show? Was it called something else?
Was this the 80s
No,
one?
it was the Super Sales show. I mean, you know, you get as big as he was in Detroit,
Yeah.
and then it was time to go now. You know, his show was shown all over the place, but out of Detroit, and then the natural thing. Okay, Hollywood calls, and we go to California, and that I remember that show. I remember going to California, and then things in his career kind of like they do in show business kind of went south.
Oh, no.
And it wasn't for another year or two, a couple years, and then here I am in New York City, and he goes with Metro Media, which was independent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had different time. I mean, now and everything is independent, but back then it was either CBS, ABC, or NBC.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
And,
Yeah.
So he goes independent in New York, and then he's bigger than ever.
Yeah, the syndicate.
You know,
So-
I knew things were happening when Frank Sinatra was in our living room,
Yeah.
wanting to get hit with a pie. You know
Wow.
what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Did your dad hit Frank Sinatra with a pie?
Oh, yeah. I've seen those
Did you-
shows.
Yeah, it's on YouTube somewhere, probably.
Wow.
But the thing is, that was my first taste through my father of seeing how cold and how it can be in Hollywood. You know, the show business scene out there, and how it is. You know, in show business, regardless to, I mean, LA is an example of it could be the worst and the best example of rare humanity in show business, you know. I mean, but I saw that as a kid of the shit he went through there.
Wow.
And then, you know, lived long enough to have my own experience of that, of it being, you know, nobody wanted to know anything about you. You know what I'm saying? You know how it is in California.
Yeah.
There's
Yep,
so
yep.
much-
What have
there's
you
so
done for
much.
what have you done for us lately kind of thing, you know?
Exactly. Someone will go, you know, Rod Stewart's my neighbor and I hate him. Fuck him. And it's like, so you know, achieving anything out there because it's an industry town and not so much the people, because there's some great people that I still know that live out there that are fucking awesome. And but the industry, not unlike a Nashville or any industry place, you know, you've got your bullshit. You know, there's something to obtain. There's something to obtain, and when there's something to obtain, of course you're going to have everyone, you know, grabbing and trying to, you know, climb off of everybody. And the thing that I know, you know, living in California is you'll be talking to someone and they'll be looking over your shoulder to see if there's something
More
better
important,
coming
though,
around.
that happens all the time. You know what I mean? You'll see people scan parties and everything. You know, it's hilarious. I mean, it's just when you see that happen. I mean, I never heard about your dad's dry spell when he came out here. That's kind of horrifying, you know. But you was a little
it
kid.
is. I mean, you know, he's the show goes wrong, and through whatever, you know, timing and, you know, in life, things will not click. And from being the biggest thing in Detroit and around the country, and then coming out to LA, and then the show not working for whatever reason, I don't, you know, maybe it was a bad time slot. I don't, you know, and it just shows you necessarily he went from ABC TV, which is at the time, this is pre-cable TV, and for television, if you were not with NBC, ABC, or CBS, those are the majors. I mean, they're, you know, nowadays who gives a shit about that? Now it's, I mean, you've got giant TV shows or podcasts or radio shows, and it doesn't matter. It's there's still major companies that control stuff, but independent now is everything, and it's like in movies and everything, and it's almost become like the major. It's like the major labels or the major TV or movies. They do things that have like an independent feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
When, when did KCOP? That was Channel 13, and then we had KTTV, which Channel 11. Were those after ABC and NBC and all them?
No, that stuff was going, but it wasn't as big. But I mean, when my dad did his show, when we went to New York, he was on Metro Media, which would have been those stations, so what he did is he did a show at Metro Media, which was, like Channel 11 or whatever, and then they'd have time slots around the country where they'd sell the show would be available, and it just shows you the show was bigger than ever, and it was not on a major. It wasn't on NBC or CBS or ABC at that point. It was, independent, like so Channel 11 or whatever it would be in California or around the country. So that's when his show was bigger than ever by going that route and skipping the majors.
Because I remember as a small child, that was my thing. I'd go, Mom, I don't want to miss the Soupy Sales show. I want the pie in the face. I want Pookie the puppet. And that was the highlight of my life. And that was around 65. I was just
Yep.
I couldn't read. I just learned going to preschool. But that was in L.A. So that was syndicated all over the country then at that time, right?
Yep. That's when it was in syndication, and then he did the show till he stopped doing it. I don't know when he stopped. 67, 68.
Wow.
I don't know. I can't remember. But several years there, he was, the biggest thing. You remember the one thing my dad had that in common with the Beatles. I mean, he was so big that when the Beatles, I remember they did Ed Sullivan, their second time on Ed Sullivan. My dad did Ed Sullivan with them. But he had that kind of thing where kids liked him, high school people liked him, college kids liked him, and adults liked him. So demographics, as they call it. And to have that kind of demographics is wild. This day and age, everything seems to be a particular audience or segment. You'll have some, like in music, you'll have a band, let's pick Slipknot, and 60,000 people will come see them. You will never see them on the Grammys.
No.
Grammys, that's worth a shit. But there's this, now everything is so, like, there's not one scene, or particular scene, except a lot of bad bullshit that's big.
Right.
But I guess the biggest thing you could say right now as far as trends would be trap house music, would be a thing that that people are into. But I was talking to somebody a while ago, and they said the last time a scene happened in music would be when Nirvana came out.
Wow.
And it changed everything overnight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No,
but it seems it's just fragmented now. Everything is there's 8 million different things for people to get into, and there's not really any one thing I think that's leading anything that I'm aware of.
Now, when did you gravitate towards music?
Yeah, when did you and Tony start playing together?
When we moved to California, I was born in 54. Okay, so 54, 55, 6, 7, 8, 1960. We came to California, 60, 61, whenever that was. And that's, I remember I liked music. This is pre-Beatles, before the Beatles were out. When I moved to California, surf music back in those days, you had regional. You still have some regional music, but with the internet, everything is the same everywhere, kind of.
Yeah.
But you still have regional, like Memphis or let's say New York with the rap thing. It came out of New York. But I mean, okay, so back then, 1960, surf music is big, and Jan and Dean, the Trashmen, they had Surfing Bird.
Oh yeah.
There was there was a ton of surf bands, and surf music was really big because of the culture in California surfing. Right. And the biggest band to come out of that and to break nationally would be the Beach Boys.
Right.
Okay. Right. But there were a ton of surf bands. There's Dick Dale, who
that guy's still awesome,
still around. Man. And Dwayne Eddy was on that, on kind of, you could call that, a little bit different, but Dwayne Eddy. So I'm listening to surf music. There's jazz being played, and I go to a recording session. My dad would make these records, and I remember going to a recording session, and the drummer Earl Palmer was playing on the session. Wow. And Earl Palmer played on a Fats Domino and Little Richard sessions, and he did tons of records. And he was one of the big drummers in California. There was Hal Blaine and Earl Palmer and Shelly Manne. And Shelly Manne, a jazz drummer, was a friend of the family's. But seeing Earl Palmer at this session, being 6, 7 years old, that's what I want to do. I didn't. Wow. I didn't see the other aspect of the show business, the comedy, what my dad did, or being an actor. That didn't particularly. All the people I was around. It was Earl Palmer, seeing him play.
Really?
And then,
wow.
And then being exposed to jazz that wanted me to play, and so I started taking drum lessons at 7 years old. I remember at Drum City, that was on Vine Street, right next to where Phil Spector made all his records, which was called Gold Star.
Wow.
Gold Star Recording Studio was on Vine in Santa Monica.
Wow.
And right down the corner, right down the block was Drum City, and that's where I had this guy, Bill Douglas, a black guy, older guy, and I started taking lessons with him, just learning the basics, and then the Beatles hit. Wow. And then I remember the Beatles hitting, and then everyone and their brother was playing. It made it okay. Everyone just like, rock and roll. It was the second wave. That's the second wave of rock and roll. The first wave being, let's say, Elvis and all that stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then, Gene Vincent, the rockabilly stuff. And then there was a time with Pat Boone and all this, bullshit. But then, the British invasion hit, and then the real second wave of rock and roll. And if you look back, what are we talking? 55 years ago? 58 years, 50, I don't know. When the Beatles did Ed Sullivan, was that 1963?
Right. I think it was 63 or 64, yeah.
Yeah, and but that was, the second wave because, Buddy Holly and all those, when he died and a bunch of shit happened, and that's when it really got weird, and it didn't really come out of that weirdness till the Beatles came over, and then all the British invasion, which basically bringing our music back to us, repackaging it, and bringing it back to us, and R&B and all that stuff. But so that the Beatles hit, but I was well into playing pre that.
Wow.
So and I'd say it would be the jazz and the stuff I heard around the house, and then go into recording sessions that got me into that. Being at certain, I was privy to being around different things, and my father being in show business, seeing sing a lot of stuff.
Wow.
And then, of course, within a few years, after California, moving to New York, and then really being exposed to a lot of music and going to see Buddy Rich play, and all the jazz people.
You got to see Buddy Rich in front of you play live?
Yeah, I got to know Buddy Rich.
Wow.
And on several different occasions, I remember him sitting down and taking the time out to talk to me, which he was very sweet. A lot of people talked about him being this and that. And now, being older, I can understand his name is on the marquee, and him having a band and having a lot of young guys who think they know everything. Just when you're young, you think you know everything, right? And then as you get older, you realize what you don't know. I've never felt dumber in my life.
So what?
Yeah.
So when this Beatle invasion came over, who started playing? Did you start playing drums was Tony already playing bass or guitar? Or I noticed he played guitar
he was playing guitar and I was playing drums, and we'd listen to records and just we're young, but we went to New York and we kept pursuing this and then trying to play, and that wasn't the easiest. Being preteen, how old? 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
By 11, and my brother's 2.5 years. My brother's 2.5 years older, so I'm 11. He's 13 and a half or so, and we're still playing, and we have this band, and I don't know really, Burgess Meredith. And people will know him as
Penguin. Quack.
Yeah. But I mean, a mice of men and a great stage actor and screen actor. But his son and this other guy, John Poussette Dort, and we had this band, Tony and the Tigers, and we got hooked up somehow through Morris Levy, who ran a record label called Roulette Records. And Roulette Records had Tommy James and the Shondells. They had a ton of stuff back in the day. And here I am, 11 years old now. And we're opening, trying to play gigs around New York City. Here I got my drums. We're playing parties. I'm too young to be doing gigs,
Yeah.
But I remember joining the union and getting a Social Security number, going down to the Social Security office and getting a Social Security card. And I'm recording now at Bell Sound, a famous studio in New York City, and down at Roulette Studios at 11 years old. And now we're doing TV shows. There was a show called Hullabaloo. It was a variety show.
Hullabaloo, yeah.
Now, back then, my dad had his show on, and we lived around the block from Metro Media, from where they taped the show.
Wow.
And my dad would have guests on every day, Jerry Lee Lewis or the Isley Brothers or whoever. Every day he had people on his show, and I'd go over there after school, hang out, and I hung out a lot down on 48th Street, which was a big area back in the day. There still is in New York City, music stores and stuff. There was a famous store called Manny's Music, and I used to hang out there and see everybody. Wes Montgomery, everybody would come in there, and a lot of the bands from Europe would come over there and buy gear, and just anybody and everybody. And I immersed myself. Here I am, 11 years old, 12 years old, doing TV shows, and we were on some gigs with my dad. But my dad would go do these gigs, and he had a novelty song out called "Do the Mouse."
Oh yeah,
Do the Mouse. I saw that at Reno Records has that in the wall in Claremont.
Yep.
And the backup band that he had, I remember going to some gigs out in New Jersey, you know, the outer boroughs of New York, out in New Jersey and wherever. And his backup band later became a band called the Rascals.
Wow.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I go to one of his gigs, and I could not believe Dino Danelli and Felix Cavallari and these guys are backing my dad up.
Wow.
And this was about a year or so before they would have their first big hit record. Good Lovin',
Wow.
you know, on Atlantic. But I don't know where he found them.
He should have signed them.
These guys are backing my dad up. They some of them worked with Joey D and the Starliner, you know, the Peppermint Twist that Joey D had.
Wow.
That's right.
And New York back then was really happening. So, you know, here I am in the middle of this whole scene, sucking it all in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then and recording and trying to muddle my way through music and learn and just, you know, do it, you know. So we did a single for Roulette. We did some TV. We couldn't do much touring being 11 years old. We did some gigs.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kept playing, and then this leads us up to, by 1969, New York City, 14, 15 years old. And that's when I started hanging out at this club. You see, I was already in an adult world by 11 years old, working in an adult.
Wow.
So by 15, I'm hanging out at clubs where, you know, I hadn't seen the other 15-year-olds. And I meet Todd Rundgren.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
This club called Steve Paul's Scene. And it was off of like 8th Avenue, and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Stevie Winwood, all these people would be hanging out
Wow.
at this club. And I remember running into Jimi Hendrix. And Jimi Hendrix, several years earlier, I saw him first. My dad would do these package shows where my dad was the headliner, and they'd have like 10 acts on the bill, and they each would do, say, a song or two. Then there'd be the next act, and then the next act, and my dad. And then it would start all over again. And this is at the Paramount Theater,
Wow.
which is torn down now, but on Broadway, the Paramount Theater. And Little Richard was on this package show, and in his band was Jimi Hendrix. This is when
Wow.
Jimi Hendrix was playing
Oh,
Little Richard.
man.
And
Jimi
now,
Hendrix
I did not
playing
know
for-
he was Jimi Hendrix, but he stuck out. I mean, I noticed him. I said, "Who is this guitar player?" You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
this guy was great. So later, when I met him, I remember hanging out and going up to him and bullshitting with him, saying, "Look, you played on a show with my dad, with Little Richard," and that kind of was an icebreaker to start up a conversation with the guy.
Right.
And so I sat and rapped to him, and he was such a nice guy.
Wow.
And I remember him saying, "You want to come down to the studio?" He was working on his second record, which would be Electric Ladyland.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Yeah, I'll come down." And here I am, 15, right? I'm in this nightclub, and with all these junkies and fucking freaks. And
No, was Aunt
I
Mary?
said,
Was
"Yeah,
Aunt?
when-
Was your
when-
mom
when
or
should
Aunt?
I come down?" And Jimi Hendrix says, "Come down about 5."
Uh-huh.
I said, five tomorrow afternoon?" He says, no, 5 in the morning.
5 in the
So
morning.
Here I am. Yeah, so here I am at home. Now, by this point, my mom and dad had split up. My dad and mom split up. I was about 12 years old. They split up.
Was
right?
Aunt
So-
Mary with you to get you through the neighborhood, or
I'm sorry, what?
did Aunt Mary go with you to Jimi Hendrix to make sure you got through the neighborhood okay?
She was back in Detroit.
Wow.
We're in New York at this point, man.
Oh.
Aunt Mary's long gone.
So no
I'm
parental
15,
guardian
I'm
whatsoever.
50. What? Say what?
No parental guardian whatsoever.
Fuck no.
You guys are on your own, man.
you know what? My dad left at 12. I was, you know, it's time to grow up. You know what I mean? Dad's gone, and you know,
Might
it's
as well
time
play.
to grow up. And I was already in an adult world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So by 15, are you kidding me? I'm running around the streets. I'm, you know, just doing whatever the fuck I want to do. And so, I mean, I go down to see Hendrix at 5 in the morning. I remember getting ready to go. My mom's like, "What are you doing?" So I'm going to see Jimi Hendrix. Okay. And even if it hadn't been okay, I would have gone down there anyway. So I remember hanging out with Jimi Hendrix at the record plant. And so I meet Todd Rundgren at the scene, at this Club Steeple scene, and he had just left the band, the Nas, and he had gotten a solo deal. And my brother, me and him ended up jamming, and it just clicked. And he said, "Man, I'd like you guys to do this record." And we said, "Well, we're moving back to California next month."
Wow.
He said, "Well, I'm gonna come out there and do my record." So next thing I know, we're out in California. We had a house out there that my dad had bought when he had the TV show for ABC, right?
Right.
We still had the house there. We were leasing it out to, of all people, Raquel Welch was renting our house out.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
And so we're back at this house that we had in Beverly Hills. And Todd comes and he's staying with us. We had an extra room, and we start working on the Run album, which is 1969, 68, 69, 69, something like that. I'm 15.
Wow.
And after that, within a year or so, I'm in New York City. I'm back in New York City and living at the Chelsea Hotel. Okay. And trying to put this tour together with Todd, which ended up a mess. You know what I mean? This and that and whatever. We did a few gigs and then.
But did you have a falling out? When you say a mess, was somebody on drugs, or did you guys have a falling out?
No, we probably should have been. No, it was just crazy. It was, you know, back then, I'm 15, 16. Todd is what? He said 22, 20.
Wow.
Come on. I mean, it was just insanity. Just trying to get stuff going. I remember we had this loft down in the Bowery, and I remember a bunch of gear getting ripped off. I think we did 1 or 2 gigs after rehearsing and trying to get this going, and then a lot of festivals and stuff were canceled by the government. It's just one problem after another, and I ended up eventually hanging out in New York and going, "This is not working," and splitting and going back to California.
Wow.
And by that point, I'm 16. I did not want to go back to school. 15. And school is like, I'm too jaded at this point. I tried, but it was not happening. So I quit school, and now I am studying. Eventually, I'm studying again with this other teacher. It's a great teacher, and I'm hanging out in the ghettos in LA, like down in Compton. I'm hanging out in Compton.
Wow.
And, playing it. There's a lot of jazz clubs down there. This is early 70s, 70, 71, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I bought a car. I bought my own car. I bought a 1950 Ford. And
Wow.
Back when you could buy those things for $100.
Right.
Not like now. Now they're like, you know, 50 grand or whatever. But back then, you know, I remember I bought my own car, and I quit school, and I'm studying and playing some jazz. I'm playing in all these places doing like B3, like Jimmy Smith, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Music.
Uh-huh.
And eventually I do a little more work with Todd, and we tried to do another. I went back to New York, and we tried to do this again. It was like we ended up doing some touring, and then that went south. You know what I mean? We took a failed attempt at this concept, this utopia.
Yeah. I remember
And,
those album
that-
covers.
And not to get into details, and that really after that experience, it was a bunch of bullshit. Going back to LA again after living in New York, and then eventually, at 15, I had this top 5 record with Todd. We Got to Get You a Woman.
Wow.
Yeah.
You worked on that one. Wow.
I'm sorry, what?
You played on that one.
So
Yeah, played on We Got to Get You a Woman.
Wow.
And I'm still waiting for my gold record. But I knew that the music business and all that was just like a fickle whore, which it is. And that's why I kept studying and started doing a bunch of session work, but I didn't place a high value on that. I wanted to be out on the road. I don't know why, touring and doing that bit, the rock and roll thing. Later on in life, I would appreciate, like I do now, doing session work where you're in the studio all day and then at home you're in your own bed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Cleveland is great, but to be in Cleveland at 10:30 on a Wednesday night is not really great. You know what I'm saying? It's really not, or wherever. And I did a succession of years. That's the right word. I probably said it wrong, but years of touring. Played with Ray Manzarek from The Doors. He had a record deal. Had some records out. Toured with him, and then I hooked up with Bob Welsh, who I had met earlier, doing some work up in Frisco, some sessions up there with him. And he had left Fleetwood Mac and got a deal, and then had a band with him called Paris. Had some records out on Capitol.
Wow.
And then from there, through knowing James Williamson, who I was friends with, and did a couple tracks on a record called Kill City with Iggy.
With Iggy,
Wow.
from Detroit.
Another Detroit legend, by the way.
Then Iggy gets hooked up with Bowie, who I met. I met Bowie back in New York because I lived around the block. I lived at Gramercy Park Hotel for a while, which is right around the block from this famous club called Max's Kansas City.
Oh, yeah. Wayne County and the Electric Chairs played there a lot.
Yep. And then, met him, and he knew of the work my brother and I did with Iggy. And Iggy had done one of three record deal with RCA that David got him a record deal. So they called my brother and I. So I went from Paris into Iggy. So it was about a 3-4 year period where I was just on the road all the time. You know what I mean? Touring. And then, in between, before that stuff, playing in Las Vegas and show bands and touring with soul bands in Alaska. And I would just take any gig and every gig, just be a working musician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it would be weird. I remember being in Alaska or somewhere playing with some fucking band and hearing We Got to Get Your Woman on the radio.
Wow.
And just feeling so removed from that. And just looking at it like if I was going to be a working musician, which I have been forever, if you're going to be a musician or you're going to be a rock star, what are you going to be? And I'm a musician, and I could say I'm a rock star, but that's fuck that. It's what I really am is my kid's father, and my wife's husband. You know what I'm saying? I could qualify for that other shit if I want to see myself. But back then, it's like I was interested, just like I am now, in learning, and I knew that I'd be playing some fucking club somewhere with some no name and trying to make a buck. I had to learn how to make a buck at playing music and making music. You know what I mean? 'Cause I didn't get into it. I got into it so early, and then I had to go and pay some other dues, despite being on records and stuff at 15, I would end up in playing clubs and bars and like any other musician that's working, and that's really for the love of music or whatever you want to call
Wow.
it.
Well, now,
So,
after
Yeah.
the problems your father had in show business, he must have been terrified when you guys went into music, right?
I don't think so. I mean, he wasn't around a lot of the time.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was, see, here's the deal. I was raised, my dad is from Huntington, West Virginia. And I was basically he raised us the way he was raised, which is pretty like, I mean, as normal as it could be, and given him and the way my family, they're fucking weird. But, I definitely do not suffer from I do not have any entitlement issues. I never have. And I remember being around other people, kids my age, a little older than me, that had famous, I remember being around Dean Martin's son. And I remember at 16, he had a Lamborghini.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was like fucking off the hook to see this shit. Now his dad's fucking Dean Martin.
Yeah.
So you don't get any cooler or bigger than that. But that was not my experience. I mean, like being given shit. I was given a name. And what I learned from my father? My father left, like I said, when I was like 12, which is not a good age, for if you're young turning into a man, from a boy to a man.
Right.
Have your father leave, it's fucked up.
Yeah.
But, you adapt, and that's the way it is. And I just went with it, and I'm not going to whine about it or any of that shit. I kind of like the fact that that I could do what I wanted to do. I knew that I wasn't going to be a bookkeeper or a lawyer or a doctor or any of that. I probably, so I knew music was going to be my thing. And like you mentioned something about not being supervised.
Yeah.
I wasn't supervised. I was left to run the fucking streets of New York.
You were
for
free
better or for
range.
worse.
You were
And,
totally free range.
So it was very interesting. I don't know, this day and age, having my own kids, letting them, they are not me, they are who they are. But
yeah, but you got girls. You don't want to let them do that. Be at CBGBs or something at all times of the night like you were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it was a case of I was already in the adult world, dealing for better for worse. Like I said, having a record deal when I was 11 years old, and doing this and that. Being from a broken family, and my parents, being split up.
Wow.
And so I was left, and I was just so into music and working on the music thing, and so that's like anything, if you're a criminal or whatever you are, you got to start young.
Right.
It helps. I don't know a lot of people that are 11 years old that were recording in studios. You know what I mean? I just don't. No, maybe you guys do. I don't. You know.
Yeah, no.
So,
You got to start, like you said. But what's interesting about you is that you went into a totally different business than your father. And the music industry is so cutthroat.
The music side of it. Now you could call it. I don't have that experience. Now maybe some guy from Pearl Jam or some band. They grew up, driving around in a Trans Am, smoking weed, and wanting to be a rock and roll or whatever. Now, I happen to see music, be around Buddy Rich and these people at a young age, at 11, 12, and like I said, the Rascals and this and that, and seeing part of this business through my father, his experiences with being fucked with ABC and the TV show, the really ugly side of show business.
Oh, yeah.
Because basically, if you're not, let's say you're a classical, I'm not classical, I'm classically trained, but I'm not a classical musician. So if you're in rock and roll, pop music, that's show business, basically.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to see it for what it is, and a lot of it is a bunch of shit, and it doesn't make any difference. Now, there is the music side of it, but there's that other word, business, music business. There's the business side of it. And I did not get in, though I was in the business side of it young, I did not get into it. I was so young getting into it. You'll ask some people, well, why did you start playing? And they go, well, to pick up chicks, right? You heard that. And I was 7 years old, 6, 7. I didn't want, I was trying to pick up chicks. And, or, it doesn't really matter what reason. They just get into it. And then you turn around one day and you see a lot of musicians, that used to play with whoever, and now they're an Uber driver or some shit. You know what I mean? And usually people do not have a long career. You see a lot of people that were in, I'm sure 98% of the hair bands from LA in the 80s, a lot of the players that were in those bands who now have a high. They're doing computer work or doing this or selling cars or doing something.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They're not still playing. And I got myself out of California. I remember in 1990, after Tin Machine, I left because I'd been spending time in Texas. We're in Austin. There's not really. It's more about playing, and there might be some little indie labels here, and New West Records has an office here, but it is not about the business here. It's about playing gigs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
and that's one reason I moved here. That's one of the reasons I moved here and left California. It's just about the music and coming back here and playing every shithole all over Texas. All over Texas. Every kind of gig you can imagine. My own gigs, other gigs with people, and making it about the music. I could have done probably the same thing in LA. I did. I played. I remember I did a lot of gigs. I remember I was producing bands and stuff. There used to be a label called Triple X Records.
wow.
And Triple X Records, Jane's Addiction started with Triple X Records. And
I did not know that.
Corn used to be called LAPD. That's how they started. That was the name of their band. And I remember playing with Jack Grisham.
Jack Grisham from TSOL.
Okay.
What was it? Something Fury?
The Sounds of True Liberty, whatever. But I remember producing a record for him. He had a side project, and this is in between Tin Machine. And then playing all over Orange County with him. His drummer had quit, and playing, gazillion gigs all over Southern California, Frisco, and anywhere and everywhere. So I probably could have done the same thing there, but I came to Texas years ago because of the heritage of the music that had come out of Texas, T-Bone Walker and Freddie King and all these guys that were from Texas. And there's a scene here in Austin. It has changed a lot, like everywhere has. It's gotten expensive, but it's about the gig here.
Yeah.
And that's why I moved 2 years ago, despite Tin Machine or Todd Rundgren or any of that shit. It's just working. I've been a working musician, either working in studios, recording, producing, arranging music, gigging, you name it. And I'm doing what I was doing when I was a 7-year-old. Hopefully I'm a little better. I've learned a little more, but you know, when I was 7 years old in my bedroom beating on the drums. You know what I mean?
Wow. Well, what was the
I'm
first?
still doing the same thing.
What was the first? What was the first album you bought for yourself?
First 2 records I bought was a single by a band called the Orlons,
The Orlons, Wah Wah Tusi.
South Street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was
meet
a
me.
record called South Street. And it was like a New Orleans kind of groove, the South Street.
Yeah.
The Orlons. And then there was a supermarket on Doheny in Santa Monica called Carl's Market. I don't even know if it's still there anymore. And they used to sell records there, and it was the Righteous Brothers. It
Wow.
was I remember buying their record because the Righteous Brothers, it was happening. And the Righteous Brothers, they were a band. They were from Southern California, along with the surf stuff. The Righteous Brothers were happening. That Phil Spector, you know, produced them. And the Righteous Brothers and the Orlons do the slow.
The Orlons, wow.
Yeah.
No, did you ever go
South
to?
Street.
Yeah, but they
I'm
also
sorry,
did they do Watusi, or am I crazy?
I'm sorry.
Did the Orlons also do the Wah Watusi?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that was somebody else that did that. But I could be
Wow.
wrong. But they had a song called South Street. If you look it
Yeah,
up.
meet me on South Street. Yo, Wah Watusi, I'm right. Wah Watusi, Don't Hang Up, and meet me, of course, the classic South Street. Meet me on South Street.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's what I'm listening to at 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
That's what I was into.
But that's amazing.
Okay.
You and Tony are completely free range long before you should be doing that, you know?
Right. I mean, I've always had a weird musical. I mean, I like anything that's good. You know, I don't give a fuck what kind of music it is.
Wow.
If it's really good and it's kicking, I like it. You know,
Yeah.
like I remember back, this would be 70, maybe 68, 69. I remember every Saturday night or Friday night, the Porter Wagner show would be on TV. I don't know
Wow.
if you guys remember that.
Yeah,
Dolly
with
Parton.
Dolly. That's where Dolly
I
got her.
don't, but I've heard of it. You know?
Yeah, and I used to watch that, and I love that shit. Country, you know, some of it is really great. You know, the good stuff. So, I have my taste in music is really varied. You know, it's not just one thing or another. I like anything, and subsequently, I've done all kinds of sessions and records, reggae and country and blues and you know, whatever it is. I gravitate towards R&B and soul. I mean, as a kid, Otis Redding and Stax music was everything.
Wow.
You know, that's what I grew up on, is Stax.
Really? I have the shirt. My brother got me the shirt when he was at the studio, Don.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Elvis or the Beatles?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. Never met. I remember the Beatles were doing the Ed Sullivan Show. And I remember that one year, for some reason, I guess they wanted to get rid of us. My dad sent me to camp.
What?
And I was so pissed off because he was doing the Ed Sullivan Show with the Beatles.
Oh,
Oh.
he didn't want you fanboying
You know what I mean?
all over them, I guess.
But I later I would meet Ringo later, and I remember running into George Harrison out at Nudies. Nudies was a Western store out in the valley, at the San Fernando Valley.
Wow.
Nudie, he made all the cowboy clothes.
Wow.
And I remember George Harrison was out there getting an outfit made, getting a suit made. So I managed to meet two of them.
That's cool.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so
Tell us about your first meeting with Iggy Pop.
I'm sorry.
How did you go into Iggy Pop's radar? How did you two hook up?
What approached him about?
James Williamson and Scott Thurston, who Scott would later go on to play with Tom Petty.
Wow.
But he played with Iggy, and James, who was a friend of my brother's, became a friend of mine, and we were friends, and we hung out. And then James was producing this record called Kill City. He had gotten studio time. There's a singer-songwriter, Jimmy Webb, who wrote MacArthur Park. You know,
Wow, for Richard Harris.
his brother had a studio. Jimmy Webb, I guess, put a studio together with his brother, and James was using it and working on this Kill City record. And that's when James brought my brother and I in to work with Iggy on several tracks on that album. Wow. So that was my first thing with Iggy, working with him in the studio with James. But I knew James as a friend, and then when James kind of got out of the music thing game, and he had an apartment up on Ivor. It was a duplex, bottom half of the duplex. I took it over from him. And so we were friends, you know what I mean? And then Iggy, I remember seeing him once at the Whiskey, and I remember Iggy at one point was kind of living on the streets, kind of staying wherever, had a girlfriend. I remember he came over to my place trying to sell me some weed one day. And it was this is before he hooked up with David helping him. And it was some shitty weed at that. But
bad weed from Iggy Pop.
A 2-finger lid of Mersh.
Yeah, exactly. And then, next thing I know, he's over in Berlin with David, and David, they do that first record, The Idiot.
Oh, yeah.
And
great album.
And then we toured behind, he called us to tour behind him, and that's when I had left, Paris had broken up, and Bob went solo, and that's when I was in his radar again, my brother and I, in 1976.
Wow.
But Kill City, I don't know when that was done, 74? Somewhere around there. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
How long did you play with Iggy?
Well,
I'm sorry?
How long did you play with Iggy?
I was with Iggy for about a year or so. We did the Idiot tour, which was Europe and America. Then we came back to California, and then we went over to Berlin and did Lust for Life.
Yes.
Wow.
And then did the tour for Lust for Life.
Now that's very iconic. That's when you, now that drum beat for Lust for Life is the most. I saw it's all over the internet.
Trainspotting.
The most recognized drum beat in the world. And that's true.
Okay.
That's now. How did you come up with that beat? How did that song?
Amazing beat.
Because that was my first Iggy album. That was my first Iggy album. I was in high school and I bought it.
That beat is a combination of we're over in Berlin working, and there's a thing called Armed Forces Radio.
Wow.
Right.
And they had this beat that was similar to that. And I took that beat and combined it with George of the Jungle.
Yes!
A little bit of,
my favorite cartoon.
A little bit of Motown. You Can't Hurry Love.
Wow.
So it's kind of a mosh of all those couple beats put together.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's really nothing new. I think the only thing new is in how what your presentation is. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So taking whatever and making something different with it. Just like, if you were to say Prince, well, Prince, wasn't he like a little bit like Little Richard and Jimi Hendrix put together? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then of course he put a spin on it. The thing about America is, with everything that's happened in our past, that could there be another? Well, there could be another Jimi Hendrix. There was Stevie Ray Vaughan, but he kind of put a different twist on it.
Right.
And if you really listen to Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, they're not the same. You know what I mean? Stevie Ray Vaughan sounds a lot like Albert King. He sounds a lot like a lot of people. And but he put a different twist on it. And the thing is that our heritage, it's good in one way and it's bad in another, opposed to England or Europe, that none of this music comes from Europe. It's all American, you know, but they
Yeah.
will take the stuff and put a twist on it, and then, you know, and like turn it around, and then bring it out a different way. So it's like anything that's out now, because of our past, it's like you better put a different twist on it, because, you know, it's part of our whatever it is. So like that drum beat, if you listen to George of the Jungle or You Can't Hurry Love, it's kind of the same thing.
That's
but it's
genius.
It's different. You know what I mean?
But it's
got a
so,
different
and it's
twist on
also
it.
so complex that a lot of people can't play it without another drummer. I saw a video that saying,
Exactly.
and there was two guys playing it,
He's answering. Go ahead.
but it's a one hunt sales. But I mean,
How did you do it
Well,
alone?
I've
Yeah.
seen,
your kick,
I've
your
seen-
tom drum, your
yeah, I'm not using my tom at all on that.
no.
Really?
On that beat. Nope. It's my bass drum, and it's my drums the way they're tuned. And when we made that record, it wasn't like, well, let's get rid of all these overtones and these noises. They just went with what I had, and it was probably what they didn't do that helped the sound of that record. You know what I mean?
Man.
Opposed to you get in the studio and they want to get rid of all these overtones and all these noises, you know,
Yeah.
sounds and noises. And if you listen to earlier records, but whether they're Motown and blues records, you'll hear this. They almost sound like punk records. I mean,
Yeah.
and it wasn't till like jingle work, commercial music in studios, where they wanted to get the drummers and the people in and out, where they started to put a wallet on the snare drum and disco, where they deadened down the drums, and it became a different thing. Drums, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The sound of drums, but that's just real noisy drums, and over, you know, almost like a Jazz Messengers, Art Blakey record, like these older jazz records where you can really hear the drums, you know, Elvin Jones and these guys. And that's my experience, is being kind of qualified to play jazz, but I am a product of my environment, which I grew up in rock and roll.
Wow.
Now, I always wanted to play with Count Basie in these bands. It was a fantasy of mine, but it didn't happen, you know. But I took the sensibility of all that love of mine for that kind of music and just put it into rock and roll. You know?
Wow.
That's been my spin, you know, as far as a drummer, trying to take the swing and all that of some of the better jazz drummers and
Jeez.
R&B drummers and stuff, you know, and bring that in rock and roll, you know.
What about you guys played? You and Tony played on The Passenger as well, right?
Yep. That's
Wow.
part of Lust for Life, Passengers on that record. We did that record because to make a really good record, like if you get a band that's been doing a lot of gigs, and we had just done like 67 gigs in 78 days.
Wow.
Tours like that between Europe and America. So that band, I mean, when we went in to make Lust for Life, we had done all these gigs, you know, several months of gigs, and we were really tight, as they say.
Yeah.
So when we went in to make this record, there was a handful of ideas, and the record was basically, Iggy had some ideas, but I remember coming up with an idea for this or that. You know, Iggy, what are you, da-da-da. And it was pretty much, and Iggy's really talented motherfucker, you know, coming up with some killer ideas and lyrics and stuff. But that record was like a bunch of people that had made a bunch of records and had been on the road for a while.
Wow.
And we did that record like in 5 days.
Wow.
You know? And it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like, well, we have demos and we're going to do that. No, it was written and recorded in the studio in a 5-day period.
Damn.
That means writing the songs, putting them together, and it just went really fast, that record, which was cool. You know, that's the best way, opposed to how a lot of people were making records, you know, Fleetwood Mac and these bands where they're spending 8 months on getting a snare drum sound.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was the opposite. It was like old school, get in and get out, you know. And when you do that, there's something about that lends itself to freshness, you know, which I think a lot of music started to suffer from that, you know, being overworked.
Yeah.
I mean, that
You
was.
know, and records became like movies where, you know, we're working on it. Now, I understand if you're recording a ton of material, but, you know, spending too much time on it, it can kind of take that aspect out, the spontaneity out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the studio. And not to make it about me, but I will for a minute.
Okay.
It's all about you, baby.
Hey, it's your show. It's your show, man.
We're just asking
Well, I
questions.
mean, the record that I have out now, my record, Get Your Shit Together, was recorded, basically all the recording, tracking and stuff was done in 4 days. Okay? On Get Your Shit Together. It was done really fast. I did 6 songs and vocals in 1 day, and then started doing overdubs. The next day, all the overdubs were done. And then I went back to Memphis and did that again in 2 days, you know, all the tracks, and then the overdubs and stuff. And then I went back after the fact and mixed it and spent not very much time mixing it. So it was done really fast. And like the blues records, and that's how I was brought up and doing session work and stuff, where you get in there and get it going and get out. You know what I mean? So you're familiar with the artist Doug Somm?
Doug
Hello?
Somm, tell us.
Doug Somm? Are you familiar with Doug Somm?
I am not. What do
I
you
am
do?
not. Who is he?
Okay, Doug Somm from Texas, and they were called. He had a song called Mendocino, and the Sir Douglas Quintet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's Doug Somm.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
you started with
some of his
Douglas.
records. Great artist, and you hear some of his records, and you hear like some wrong notes and this and that, and it's just like it doesn't matter. It's like they have a vibe to them. I'm just mentioning him as one of a ton of different acts,
Right.
you know, different artists. But you get in there and you just throw this shit down in the studio, and you get in and you get out, and for better or for worse. And it's not. There's some stuff. This ain't perfect. That ain't perfect. But the spontaneity.
Yeah.
Word, maybe. And there's something to be said for that. And that, you know, records, they became almost like making movies, where
Wow.
it's like, you know, spending 6 months, 7 months on making a record.
Right.
Now, I understand if you record 100 songs in 6 months, okay. But I mean, if you're working on, you know, you got records out there, they don't sound real. I mean, they just sound like manufactured.
Yeah. And I think that's a problem today, right? There's a lot of sweetened music and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There's always been stuff like product or whatever you want to call it, and fine and dandy. But you'll see these. There's that movie with the Rolling Stones where they're in there years ago working up a song, and it's, you know what I mean. And by the end of the day, they've got it. They're jamming off. It sounds completely different.
Wow.
And then they cut it, and then they'll track it. You know what I mean? And it's fresh. And just keeping the stuff sounding fresh and not killing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that record, because I was there and made it with Iggy and David and my brother and a few other people, we just did it really fast. So there wasn't a lot of time for reflection. You know what I mean? Fuck that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
After the fact, yeah, you reflect. Gee, what do we have here? But I mean, making the record, it was done really fast, and it's a lot of things going on, chemistry and and mistakes, good mistakes. You know what I mean? Like happy, good, you know, you like do something fucked up. Another band that I was in where we would record like this would be Tin Machine, and we would go in the studio and maybe put 2 or 3 songs a day, write them in the studio. And it was the same rhythm section, my brother and me, and then David, who did Lust for Life, and the one that was missing would be Iggy.
Wow.
Minus Iggy. But that same kind of feel where we would do this stuff and just get in. I remember that guy that worked, one of the guys that worked on it with us, he came in there and saw us in the studio, like, what the fuck are they doing? You know what I mean? Like, you know, just fucking around in the studio. And that's almost like some people that don't know any better, which is cool. You know what I mean? That thing about knowing, the thing about knowing can get in the way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you didn't know not to do that.
Exactly. It's kind of like letting the crazy people run the asylum. You know, they're in charge. So there's something to be said for that. Just getting in the studio, and some of the best records have been made that way, on the fly. You know what I mean? Just really
Fascinating.
fast, and not overthinking it, not overdoing it. And of course, that's not good for every record, but those records that are made that way, they seem to have a certain vibe to them, like a live record. You know what I mean? Like James Brown. I remember one of the records I bought when I was a little bit older. I was in New York in '60, whatever year it was Live at the Apollo. James Brown.
Wow.
Are you familiar with Live at the Apollo?
Oh yeah, yes, many times. Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, that's James Brown. See, when I was a kid, when I was 12, I was going up to the Apollo to see James Brown.
Wow.
Okay, and to see James Brown at the Apollo is different than seeing James Brown playing for a bunch of white people in a different setting. Now, James Brown was still James Brown. But you see him at the Apollo, man. He's playing for his audience up there, you know, and he's really bringing it on, you know what I mean? And at the Apollo, man, they just, you know, if they didn't like something, they would boo, or, you know what I mean?
They would boo friggin' James Brown?
So, I mean, I saw James Brown at the Apollo. I saw James Brown at the old Madison Square Garden, and I saw James Brown at Dodger Stadium.
Wow.
Because that's how big he was. You know what I mean? To play Dodger Stadium. You know what I mean? Now we're talking. The Beatles played Dodger Stadium.
I saw McCartney played there a couple of years back.
Say what?
I saw Paul McCartney do a reunion thing at Dodger Stadium a couple of years ago.
Right. That's a big gig.
Yeah, that holds a lot of people, man.
That holds a lot of people.
Wow.
But, seeing James Brown at Dodger Stadium, man, what a trip that was.
Oh, yeah.
You know? But seeing him at the Apollo, what a trip that was. You know what I mean? Being, 12 years old and hanging out at the Apollo Theater, man.
Wow. They didn't have no problems letting you in, or what? You just...
They'll let anybody in if you pay the fucking $4.
$4 to see. Hell yeah.
Wow. Well, by the way, how'd you come up with the name Tin Machine? Who named you guys?
Whose idea was that?
Yeah.
I have no idea. It may have been David's idea. All I know is when we started recording with David and Reeves, my brother and me, and it was evident this was not a David Bowie record. This was a band.
This
project.
was a band, yeah.
And then we had a bunch of names we wrote down and came up with that name. You know what I mean? I have no idea who came up with that.
So,
but it was like a garage band with a multi-millionaire lead singer.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, was that, I listened to Jonesy's Jukebox, out here, and the Spiders from Mars were on Steve Jones's radio show. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about how David pulled the plug on them almost on a whim. Just announced at Madison Square Garden they were all done. They were never going to play together. Were you and Tony worried about a similar situation happening to you guys, or it didn't matter?
I had other worries. I mean, we were supposed to do another record, and then next thing I hear is David was moving on.
Oh, wow.
Which was okay to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing lasts forever.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, that I came into David's life again, after being in his life with Iggy at a certain point when he had just finished a Glass Spider tour, whatever the fuck that meant, Glass Spider. And he was kind of a little bit lost.
Mm-hmm. I went to that show. Point. It was horrible. Except for Susie and the Banshees. Everyone seemed to be walking through it,
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
I believe he was out there, and I'm not going to blame anybody for making a buck, but I think at that point it had become about the money, more about the money than the music. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like you said, you were at that show and it wasn't very good.
Horrible.
So here you come, Tin Machine, and I believe part of Tin Machine was a reason for David to play some music and kind of give a shit again.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Like,
to have something different, and it was a band. And if there was something I didn't like, I wasn't working for him. I was working with him, and there's a difference.
Yeah. You're equal partner kind of thing.
Exactly. So I could say to him, "You know what I like about that, David?" He'd say, "What?" And I'd say, "Nothing." You know what I mean? And he would laugh, and I would laugh, and I would be, So for a minute there, we had a really cool thing going on.
Right.
And he was basically, where do you go? I don't have this experience, but I've seen it. But where does somebody go when they have a ton of money? They've made a bunch of great records. Okay, now they have all the money they need. They've done a bunch of great work. Now what are they going to do if they get stuck in that? You know what I mean? So there you are at a Glass Spider tour watching him.
Horrible.
And he's basically going through the motions.
Yeah, you're phoning it in. It was a really lazy concert. Susie and the Banshees opened for him, and they were amazing. He came out, crowded stage, a bunch of dancers. There was one guy who, for every song, one guy walked around them, not playing music, not singing, not doing any instruments. He walked around David Bowie swinging an aluminum bat. I still don't know what that was about.
Yeah.
Right, and neither did he. Were they waiting for batting practice?
It was Anaheim
that's
Stadium.
What I'm saying. It's like at that point, where did you see him? At the Forum, or where was
Anaheim Stadium.
Yeah.
Anaheim Stadium?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have him at Anaheim. This is after Let's Dance, right?
I heard that. That one was amazing, I heard, because Madness, Bowie, the Go-Go's, amazing,
Yeah. Now, that one I went to, it was great. But at this point, he's got money. He's bigger than he's ever been. And what is wrong with this picture? Obviously something, because next thing, I was in Texas at that point, working with somebody, producing somebody in the studio, and just, doing that deal, producing records and shit, hustle. And that's my brother ran into him at a party, the closing party or whatever you want to call it for that Glass Spider thing. And that's when he ran into David, and I've been thinking about you, and one thing, I got this guitar player Reeves, and next thing I know, I'm back in LA and I'm in a rehearsal.
Wow.
hall with my brother and David, and we're jamming and coming up with some ideas. And the next thing I know after that, we go to Switzerland where he was living, and
Wow.
we're recording, and David is, I guess reinventing himself again, but with the help of some people that do not have $100 million in the bank. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was probably the closest thing, and I can't speak for him. All I can speak is what I think, what I believe, my perception is, the closest thing he could get back to, though it was a band, but when he started with Ziggy Stardust, doing all that shit with Nick Ronson, and he had a cool band.
Yeah.
And he was just getting going, and the future looked bright, and who knows what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was kind of that vibe, and that was the cool thing about the band, taking some chances. And it was weird. The audience for David Bowie back then would be like half of the audience would be, fuck you guys, we want to hear Let's Dance.
Right.
Da, 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 da. And then the other people would be going, this is really cool. This is rock and roll. This is rocking out. I like this. And it's, we got back to basics, making, like I said, going to the studio and just writing in the studio and recording and stuff. And it's like, you see Paul McCartney now, and he's got, I know one of the guys that plays with him, Brian Ray, great musician, great guy. And it's Paul McCartney's thing, but he's got some other guys with him, and they jam and do whatever, in the thing of doing Beatles songs and stuff. But he's out there Paul McCartnney he's out there playing because he wants to play.
And his first
You know what I
number
mean?
one hit, he's the first number one single by Paul McCartney in like 40 years, right?
I don't know, is it?
Yeah, the top song from his thing went to number one about a month ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it blew everyone's minds because, I hadn't heard him be that interesting since Elvis Costello was jamming with him,
Yeah.
Right. So, everybody needs a reason. We all need a reason to get up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And when you lose that reason,
Wow.
that's when you have problems, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I don't care. It's like, you can have all the money in the world. So, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's only when you get to a place where why do you have a guy walking around with a baseball bat, like you were saying?
Yeah.
What the fuck is,
It made no effing
what does
sense.
that have to do with Louie Louie?
Yeah, exactly. And I love when you did Tin Machine, everyone was looking at like David Bowie had been thrown into a cult or something. And I like his stuff was actually interesting again. It wasn't just the 90th iteration of Heroes or something,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that to me was the great thing about that band. Now, it wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but I think, this is just my thing, that a lot of that stuff still sounds good today.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It's
What's your?
Something.
even looking at the album cover and how you guys shifted positions.
Album cover.
The photograph, like you're in the back, right, where Davis, and then you guys all like switch positions, and that kind of told me that that's everybody's band. It's like it's not focused on one person or David Bowie. He's in the background, and everybody is equal.
Yeah, they were. Everyone was. The trip is, I've told you my background on this thing, your podcast or whatever, of me playing at 11 years old. There's a thing in the press that the Rolling Stones, whatever, Keith Richards, is 75 years old. Okay? I'm 65 years old. but I've been doing this not on that level, not to that success at all, anywhere near. But I've been doing this as long as these other motherfuckers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can
Now,
still bring it, though. You
the
still
only
bring it.
difference is that when Keith Richards was 11 years old, he was not in recording studios.
Wow.
No.
Yeah.
I doubt it. I could be wrong. But when I was 11, he was what? He's 10 years. He was 21, right?
Yeah.
And they were popular. You know, they had their hits out and stuff.
Wow.
They were going. So, but I've been doing this a long time, and the fact is that one thing that we had in common with Tin Machine was David had been doing this thing a long time, and so had my brother and I.
Wow.
We'd all done a million fucking recording sessions,
Right.
in studios. So, regardless to the fame, let's forget the fame part of this, but the experience. Everybody in Tin Machine had been, doing this for quite a while. Probably the one that hadn't been doing it as long as us was Reeves.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Due to his age or just his experience. But he'd, done a lot of recording and stuff and writing. So you get these people that have been doing this a long time, and they're just having fun.
Wow.
And the thing that was cool about it was David, we had a good budget to work with, so we could sit in the studio and fuck around
Wow.
Right.
and record. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
The thing that messed with Tin Machine was we did the first album, and instead of doing a proper tour for that album, David went back to the other thing. We did like a week and a half promotional tour, and then he did one of these tours, farewell tour, one of those.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
I'll never
For
play
the
these
money.
songs again, he
For the
lied.
money.
Yeah.
He got offered $50 million, and I'm gonna do a tour. Well, what about Tin Machine? Well, we're just gonna do a week and a half tour, and that's it, a promotional tour. And then we stopped doing Tin Machine for about 7-8 months while David did this farewell tour, made a ton of money, more money, back to the money, I said, if you want to be Frankie Valli, that's your trip.
Wow, you said that to him. You said that to him.
And I like Frankie Valli, don't get me wrong.
No, but but he's coasting. What did he say when you called him on that?
I told him he probably could have made more money if he waited. And he said, yeah, someone else told me that. What are you going to say to someone? Don't go make $50 million? I mean, that's absurd. It's like, $50 million is that's a lot of money. And I said, I can't sit here. I said, it's fucking up Tin Machine. But maybe if someone offered me $50 million, I'd do the same thing. You know
You'd
what
be
I mean?
doing the mouse till the cow came home.
I wasn't thrilled about it. We were supposed to we didn't do a proper tour for Tin Machine till later that year when we released the second record. Then we did Europe, Japan, and America, and then it was over. But that record, that first Tin Machine record, really caught on. It went gold really fast in Europe. And I don't know, we probably could have got a little more out of it if we had toured it. You know what I mean? Done a proper tour to support that record. But
did you have No, finish that sentence. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
Well, he went back to doing the Glass Spider bit. You know what I mean? He went and did a farewell tour.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So now what were you going to say?
I was going to ask you, what are your favorite collaborations with your brother and Bowie in that era? What were your favorite songs?
I don't know. They're all different. You know what I mean? The Lust for Life thing was great. Getting in there and plowing out that record in 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And then the Tin Machine stuff where we go and record 55 songs and for a record, and then pick 12 or 14 for the record. 13 tracks. And having all these leftover tracks done. A lot of material from those sessions around.
Because it seems tight. I mean, you and Tony are like this backbone beat, and then a guitar player could like jump in and like, hey, I could jam with these guys, man.
Exactly. And that's just from a lifetime of us being brothers and playing together.
Yeah, it's
You know
like
what
the
I mean?
chemistry is just a one. It's like this power, this
But-
force, and like when you did the what was the Instinct tour with Steve Jones. I mean that record rocked, man.
You toured with Jonesy.
Yeah, I mean
Tell
you
us
guys
about that.
sounded.
I never toured with I never played with Jonesy. I never played with him. My brother had a band with him called Checkered Past.
Oh, Checkered Past. Okay, that was Michael DeBarras.
That was
Yeah.
that was Tony. That he's saying it was Tony, not him.
Oh,
Yeah, that ain't me,
Wow.
babe.
Well, you know what? I have to say, hun, I'm a journalist as well, and I interviewed I interviewed your former sister-in-law last year, Nulka, and she was
okay.
she was raving you up, and she said when Tony had the car crash, it was like your story on your dad. It was like, where did everybody go when suddenly, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah. Yep. That was some not good times. You know what I mean? Everything changed. You know, like life can, it changes in a New York second or whatever the saying is, you know. And it's amazing that he was able to come back eventually from that car crash. You know, unlike Jan and Dean,
oh yeah,
where that other guy was never quite the same.
never, and they basically wheeled him into state fairs and that sort of crap, you know.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
she Anulka was so touched by you, your devotion to your brother. It was really moving, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, it's family, and the only thing that's real is family. You know what I mean?
This is
that's
true.
The only thing that's gotten me through anything in life has been family.
Wow.
You know, whether it's my brother or my family that I have. You know, I have 2 kids,
Yeah.
and that's
No,
the
our
only
sugar.
thing that's real.
That's true. Are Sugar and her sister are thinking about singing, or would you dissuade them if they did?
Sugar, I don't know what. She's a great artist, like her sister, stepsister, and my older daughter, Callie, is a great artist.
I
You know,
noticed. I loved that portrait she did of you, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that portrait's great.
she does all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? And is busy doing her thing. And the other one's 11, not like me. I mean, you know, I mean, Callie is like me in a way that when she was 3 and 4, she was into her drawing and painting and all that stuff, and continued with it. And she knew what she wanted to do when she was little. You know, when she was that age, at 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and so on and so on. And then she went to Pasadena Art and Design, you know, Pasadena College.
Oh, yeah.
you
No,
know,
beautiful.
in California, where Chip Foose and a lot of great people
Oh,
have
yeah.
gone, car designers and artists and stuff. But I mean, she was a great artist before even going to that school.
Wow.
And that school was good. It was good for her. It was like boot camp. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
it just helped finish off some things within herself, like school, like, you know, education does. Not that I would know anything. I mean, the education I have is from living on the street, working, and not classrooms. In school, though, I studied drums, and I remember when I studied really hardcore for a while. There was a little over 2-year period where I studied, and I sat in a room about 8-9 hours every day, 6 days a week, and practiced and worked on my stuff. You know what I mean? With drums, and it really helped. There's a lot of things that I needed to learn, and I did, and that's all I did was. Because I quit school, my education was studying with this one guy and then sitting in a room every day. You know, I'd wake up in the morning, go into this room and practice all day. And then at night, I would be out in Compton jamming with people at different clubs that were open back then in the day. You know what I mean? But education's everything, you know, whatever it may be to learn your craft. And then there's different kinds of educations. There's the street, you know.
Yeah.
You learn good and bad shit on the street, and then getting to work you know, whatever it may be, that there's nothing like people mentoring people, or what do you call that? People get a job somewhere and they're like a apprentice, you know, being an apprentice. What do they call that? They hire somebody at a job. They don't pay them, but it's the word I'm looking for. You know, when you hire somebody.
Yeah. You're giving them a chance, you know, and
Yeah. To you know, I see, and this is not a good or bad thing or anything, but I see people that are like 21, 22, and they're still, and it's the way they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And some people have a calling at a young age, and they get to it. You know what I mean? Like these people, basketball players, sports people, kids, they're like, what, they're 7 years old, they're playing basketball. And they have a dream, and they get better and better and better, and they do good in school, and they get a scholarship, and they go to college, and then a scout comes out and sees, I mean, very small percentage of them, but then it's a very small percentage if anyone does anything, as you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm one of fucking 10 billion fucking drummers.
Yeah.
You know, and what I do is not everyone's, you know, favorite thing, and there's some people that like what I do, some people that don't, and I'm one of a bunch of drummers, and there's some great drummers out there, and one size does not fit all. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Some people, and over the years, it's like Lust for Life means something different than it meant. After I cut that album and came back to California, man, no one gave a fuck.
Really?
Some people did. A few people, yeah. It did. It took on more as time went on. You know what I mean? Like, I've lived long enough for whatever to be around, and you know, it's this reflection. People going, God, that's really good. But I'll tell you, when that record came out, Elvis Presley died.
That's right.
Wow.
And Iggy, who was signed to RCA, and Elvis was at RCA, along with Hall & Notes and a bunch of other people, got put on the back burner because back then they wanted to get all this product out of Elvis Presley, you know what I mean, and maximize on his death.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the pressing plants went into 24/7, and they were making a lot of money on Elvis Presley stuff, so everything else suffered. So it was only over time, and then that movie Trainspotting comes out.
Wow.
Yes.
And then people get hip to Iggy that maybe the first time around weren't hip to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and all these
totally.
TV commercials,
Even
with the passenger and this and that, and it takes
Up in the air uses the Passenger. The other one, you know what I mean. Lust for
there's
Life
a cruise
shows.
ship commercial.
Lust for Life shows up in the Trainspotting and the cruise ship commercial.
Yeah, the cruise ship commercial too.
Passenger,
you know,
yeah.
a lot like now it's a
Exactly.
mainstream
So
thing. Like 30 years later, you know.
Exactly. So it takes on a whole thing. It takes on a whole other groove. It's just like there's a guitar player I knew, this singer. If he was around today, what would he be doing? Johnny Thunders.
Yeah,
Oh
Johnny
my
Thunders.
God! Yes.
Would he be playing? Would he be playing the Forum now?
Wow.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
You can't put your arms around a
So-
memory. It's bounced back. It's amazing.
It's when these people die, and then there's these hidden recordings that nobody's heard, just like with Hendrix too. Like, how come we're hearing new tracks and stuff that we haven't heard, and 20 years later they're still putting shit out?
Well, the thing about Jimi Hendrix is that all he did was, when he wasn't sleeping, he was in a recording studio recording.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
all he did. You know, either he was gigging or recording.
Wow.
And so he's got hundreds and hundreds of tracks he's left. And there's a bunch of crap, of course, like anybody, but then there's a bunch of really cool shit sitting around.
Right.
And I'm sure there's stuff that's nobody's even heard yet of his. I mean, the stuff, when I went to see him record, it was just another day of or 5 in the morning, but that's all he did
Wow.
was work. That's what he liked to do. That's what he did. He worked all the time. And that's all it's about anyways, isn't it? I mean, the music, it's about the work for whoever it is, I mean, that's why whoever is popular, there's a lot of reasons. But the bottom line is about all this crap, it is about the work. It's not about anything else. It's not about what clothes somebody's wearing or this or that or bullshit. And unfortunately, we live in a time now where there's people that are famous for being famous.
Yeah.
And they're famous because they shop.
Wow.
Or, they're fucking sports figures. You dig what I'm saying?
Like Angeline in Hollywood with her Corvette and on the billboards.
Exactly. That's just, that's, that's it. That's
it's like, what do you do?
That's a bad version. Not that the other version's much better, but of Kim Kardashian or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a cheeseball version of, that was a version of things to come, which is scary. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't have any answers to anything except have a good breakfast in the morning.
Well, by the way, that's good advice. Let me ask you this. Since we just brought up the cruise ship commercials and that amazing use of in train spotting and stuff, do you like when your stuff is used for trailer music? Is that exciting to see it exposed to a new audience?
I guess. I don't, I mean, to me, the best compliment, the best thing outside of getting paid for something is that when someone says, if I inspired somebody,
wow,
or if somebody likes something that I did, that's a great feeling.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To hopefully inspire somebody, and someone likes what you do, right?
Right. Yeah. That's a very good point. That's a very, very good point. When you look at it like that, I mean, because I was thinking, you first really fell on my radar when I heard your song in Dr. Giggles. Did you like when this lurid horror movie using your song? Was that cool?
I'm sorry, you said something about Dr. Giggles, and what was the question?
Yeah, it was exciting to me to hear your stuff in Dr. Giggles. Were you excited when they used your song?
Yeah, that was great. You know what I mean? More people hearing what we're doing and stuff. And to be the music to be heard. Hopefully, one makes music and people can hear it. You know what I mean? And being exposed to all those people, people that have heard what I've been involved in. It isn't all my doing. The other people that were involved. Nobody does anything alone. But for whatever my participation was, if somebody likes it, then what a great feeling that is.
That's really exciting. I mean? Yeah.
I have to play that track, that video for Pat. I had no idea you played guitar. How long? I mean, did you always play guitar along with the drums? When did you start picking up guitar?
I started playing guitar, I don't know, 30 years ago or so, 35 years ago. And then I got, over the last 25 years, I got more serious about sitting down and putting the time in to write music, because I got one credited to one song on Lost for Life.
Wow.
And on that song, Fall in Love with Me.
Yeah. Fall in Love with Me. Yeah.
Record.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm playing bass on that song.
Wow.
Whoa. That's cool.
And I've always played bass. And then I started playing some guitar and then got more serious. And then I put in the time. And I sit around and put a lot of time into writing, writing music and arranging. And to make a comparison, there was other drummers that have come before me, whether it's Buddy Rich or Art Blakey or Tony Williams, and they play with a bunch of different people. Then they get to a point in their career where they have their own band. You know what I mean? That's how they end up, to reinvent themselves and have their own band, and that's where I'm at now. You know what I mean? Not that I wouldn't mind playing with whoever, and I'll go out and do whatever gig, but basically that's where I got to. It was after Tin Machine. I started having my own band after the Sales Brothers, when my brother was in his accident. After that, I started with my band on Sales in the Big Nine, and we were playing around California.
Wow.
And there's some video on YouTube of that band I had. It was a horn band, horns, and I was fronting it. But I started getting into that back then and writing, and I've continued and just tried to work on it. You know what I mean? My love of music and the creative process and that. So like I said earlier, I'm doing more and hopefully better, but the same little 7-year-old that was sitting beating on the drums.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing a different variation. I can do more now. I arrange music and do sessions and da-da-da-da and all that other shit.
Wow.
But it's still the same thing. You know what I mean? Still the music thing, and still working on it and trying to get better at what I do at this late stage. That's what I do. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I remember being in Nashville, and I ran into somebody, and they said, "Are you still playing?" I said, "No, I'm selling real estate now." They said, "You are?" I said, "Fuck no, I'm playing." You know what I mean? And, that ain't me. I've had to, because of my lack of education and stuff, I've had to go make money digging ditches, and I've had to go make money doing other crazy shit. You know what I mean? Thank God I wasn't fucking stopped or caught. Or
Wow.
I'd be doing serious time. But that's life. You know what I mean? And life is strange. Life is stranger than fiction, is it not?
This is true. In fact, you're living in Austin now, right?
Yeah, I've been here. This person came up to me a month or two ago, and they said, "You live here?" I said, "I haven't been here long. I've been here about 21 years." So if that tells you anything, I'm kind of under the radar. So people know I live here. I'm here. But, I've been in Austin, Texas for about 21 years, something like that. I left California. I'd had enough of it. And like I said, there's some great people out there. But I like it here. It's about the music. There's great musicians here. And there's this thing here, this low down thing, blues thing.
Right.
And that's what turned me on to be here. And
wow.
LA years ago, I know it still exists. Of course it does. But it seems like at one point, and I heard they just sold the property up there where the Viper Room used to be.
Uh-huh.
They sold.
Yeah.
Right? And Turner's Liquor, is that all plowed down now?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there used to be a lot of live, and then all of a sudden, like everywhere, or more of it, the DJ thing took over, and you've got that sensibility. There's still live music, of course, everywhere, but there's less of it than there used to be, I believe, in Hollywood, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, in fact, let me ask, do you drink Shiner Bock?
Nope.
You don't drink
I don't
Shiner
drink.
Bock? Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Okay.
don't drink. I used to drink, but I used to drink 151 rum.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That shit lights on fire, man.
Yeah.
You can run your car on
Of
that.
course it does. That's some evil shit.
Yeah. Well, now, we're wrapping into the last 8 minutes. How do we tell our audience how to ascertain your latest your Get to Shit Together CD?
Great question. Yeah.
You can order it on Amazon or wherever you order vinyl or records on the internet. Fat Possum Records.
Yeah.
You can go to Fat Possum.
Fat Possum
and order
Records.
from them, or wherever you get vinyl or CDs. Where you know what I mean. Whatever outlet, but on the internet you can order records and CDs. You know what I mean? You can download it, or I've got vinyl out.
Oh,
So,
vinyl
the
ones would be good. Now,
Packaging is interesting. It's on white vinyl, and there's some really, I'm not even going to tell you what it is, but some X-rated shit on the vinyl, printed on the vinyl.
that's great.
And you got to buy the vinyl to see it. You know what
Great.
I mean, it's on, and there's a poster in the album that folds out about 4 times the size of the record.
I love that. That's
So-
what I loved about vinyl, man. You could just it's such a package. It's a physical thing. Stickers, of pictures, of posters. I miss all that.
Yep. Well, we included that shit in mine.
So I could just look it up.
Poster that comes with a CD and with the vinyl with the record.
So that's great with Amazon. We can just go to Amazon and dial up Hunt Sales Memorial, and it's there.
Yeah, the name of the record is called "Get Your Shit Together."
Yeah, I'm still
And,
trying to get my
it's
shit together,
available
man.
Wherever you buy vinyl and buy all that shit online, and those who do know, and those who don't, well, that's how you do it.
Where can people follow you online?
I've got an online site going up in about a week or so, and the Hunt Sales Memorial with T-shirts and stuff you can buy
Great.
if you so want to.
Hunt, you've been
And,
go on.
And you're probably on your limit on Facebook. I remember you had it when you accepted me back in 2013. I think you're already up to 4,000 by then.
Oh yeah, way past there. You know what I mean? I'm on Instagram, Hunt Sales on Instagram. You can catch me on Instagram on Hunt Sales or the Hunt Sales Memorial.
Wow.
On Instagram for those who do.
Well, Hunt, this has been an amazing couple of hours. Thank you so much for taking the time and telling us so many great stories.
Thank you very much. I've had a great time.
This is great. There's some great history, man, and a great legacy that
You know
your family left.
You reminded me, one of the things you reminded me, I remember my junior high math teacher at Larry Banish at Grissom Junior High. He was so excited. He would mention your dad because I guess back in the day, I guess when he was in college, your dad put his entire Wayne State frat on one of his shows, and I guess that did very well for them with the ladies. Everyone,
Oh, good.
you know, so you got my math teacher laid. Thank you. But thank you, Hunt. You have been amazing, and Jeff and I were and Bernard were just spellbound. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Okay, I'll give you a call later on this weekend, man.
That sounds great.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
man.
And great luck in the new album.
When it's on YouTube, I'll shoot it to you. Oh, he's already there. Okay.
It's already there. Bernard
That's
is
the
the
end of the
man.
Jeff and Janky show
Jeff
with
and
the
Janky.
legend Hunt Sale.
The legendary Hunt Sales, and we thank you for being here too. Booyah.
All right. Until the next time with whatever goes up in our our chaotic lifestyle here.
This week's Hot Chick Friday was a sausage fest.
Oh, yeah.
Bernard showed up for nothing.
Woo! All
Till
right.
next time, gang.
Oh.